Just like we could with marijuana.
Yes.
Yeah, we can't do that with this. So we have the only things we can regulate is like the hours they're open, the location they're at, and then what do you mean by manner?
Manner is how you would store it, and then any number of things, security, a whole list of items.
Okay, so we don't have a definition for this particular meeting.
Only because that's not what we're here to regulate. We know what it is under code. We are only here specifically to talk about time, place, and manner restrictions possible.
Yeah, because the voters allowed it, so.
I guess I just don't understand. My question isn't hostile. It's I'm naive to the fact that under code, I don't know by the state. Will you guys elaborate at this time on what that code is, or do I need to bring that up at a different time?
If you want to see me after the meeting, I'm happy to provide you all that I have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I had, really.
I think roughly it's it's for medical purposes. It's not recreational. So,
I 100% understand. That's
Yeah.
what I'm here to find out.
okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, both are on. Let me, no screen lights. We're on.
Use the taller one, please.
So I'm Richard Davis. One thing I have not heard, is it restricted to commercial property, or does it depend upon whether it's a commercial business or is it residential?
I think we're gonna get there. So right now we're doing distance from
Okay.
schools, and then we're gonna talk about distance from parks, and then we're gonna talk about which zoning.
So then you're also going to talk about walkways where school children will be walking through to make sure that it's not a temptation for school children to be walking past it? Or is that something you guys have thought about?
That's what the distance is. I mean, and that's what we do with kind of the marijuana shops, is it has to be 1,500 feet from, I think, from the school edge of the parcel to the edge of or to the front door.
It is the front door of the establishment to the property line of the park or school.
Okay.
Park and school, okay. Because I was thinking, sometimes school children be walking certain areas because of where the property is located at.
Possibly, we have not got there yet.
Okay.
Okay. All right, then I think we can move on to the public park.
Okay. Number 3, suggested language is a building where a natural medicine business is located may not be within 500 feet of a public park. Now, this is not regulated by the state. However, our marijuana code says that marijuana possession and consumption on city property, including but not limited to real property, occupied or used by the city, such as city hall, park, or other facilities, trails, river properties, streets, sidewalks, etc., whether located in the city limits or not. So this would apply to the, perhaps the ball diamonds down on G2. Under Cortez, Section 18-56, at sequential, states that an exception is made when transportation of small amounts of marijuana, which is defined as 1 ounce or less, is being transported on city streets or sidewalks. So the state code does not regulate this, but the only definition for marijuana is just can't be in a park.
I was going to say, I think that limiting the distance to parks, similar to the 1,500 to a school or child care center, it's about where children are and where children frequent. I think I would be okay with that, potentially with a similar carve out for the hospital PUD if they're interested. Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts on that.
What was your distance?
The 500 that's on the 500 that's in here, yeah.
So the only question I have about this is a bit of ambiguity. It says that a building where a natural medicine business, and so technically, the healing centers are different from the cultivators, the manufacturing, and the testing facilities.
Correct.
So are we applying this to also, because they're calling, at least what I've seen so far, the natural medicine businesses are the cultivators, the manufacturing, and the testers. And then the healing center is something looked at as being different. So are we looking at this being as all of these, or what are we looking at here?
Well, the language the city attorney provided was business, so I'm assuming it applies to both.
Well, in the CML data that I've been reading and the things that they've been putting out, they're calling businesses are typically zoned where medicine healing centers are typically different. So I just think if we're going to include the healing centers and the businesses, we ought to be specific and say healing centers also.
Okay, so if I understand, the will of council is that we,
I'd like to,
okay,
I would like to exclude the industrial park as well, because the industrial park shares a boundary with Gear, but I think that would be a better place than anywhere for the manufacturing, the cultivating, and the testing.
Yeah, I would agree with that as
Yeah, that's good, that's good.
Yeah. And then my other question is what's the definition of a public park? Just property that we own?
right. So if you look at the list that's in the marijuana code, I think that's what we're looking to adopt. In here, that the city attorney's got written in here just of a public park, but if the council wants, we can also include those other items of all parks, city hall, any real estate owned by the city, other facilities, trails, river property, streets, et cetera. So we would just need guidance on what the will of council is on what do you want to do with that. A public park is just that. It's a public gathering place, and we usually have a named park.
Okay. I'm fine with just the parks, yeah. Because because like Councilmember Dobry said, it's about like where children are, and you could include the library and the rec center, but they're in parks, so you're already kind of covered there.
Yeah, and I don't think it would make sense to extend it in the same way to all city-owned facilities. That would, unless we specifically excluded it, that would take out the significant parts of the industrial park as well, because of the city-owned facilities there. So I think just limit it specifically to the parks.
Okay, so
If we, just another thought here, what if we did something that said for recreational, like for example, the trails and the recreational are uses, and they're gonna get kids on them. If we're looking to protect children from exposure to this, then it should be, I would think, things like that would have anything to do with recreation. Now, I don't know how we do that. I'm just throwing out ideas here. Like, for example, the golf course gets a lot of kids on it, right? It's not a park. I don't know. I don't know of any other,
Yeah, is the golf course included in that park?
no, it is not a park, it's a golf course.
Okay.
So there's areas that kids are going to be in that I think if we're looking to protect children, then we should look to protect children as far as recreational things where they might be at.
I
their family.
I think looking at the zoning around the golf course, it's all residential, and I doubt we're gonna include residential in our zoning, so that might address it right there.
Well, I don't mean just the golf course, but I mean other spots like that, like the trails. There are trails that are not in the park. Just ideas.
Yeah, I mean, you got New View right across the street from Denny Lake, and it's less than 500 feet, but.
Is it less than 5?
Do we want to turn it to the audience, or?
I think that's something that we could potentially ask GIS staff to identify is what are the park facilities in the city, what actually qualifies as a park, what's tagged as a park, so we could see what all those are. Would that be possible?
There's one other thing in this, under 3, it's got that, and at the bottom in the red, it says Cortez Code states that an exception is made when transportation of small amounts of marijuana is being transported on city streets and sidewalks. In theory, there should be no transportation of product out of the healing centers. There will be transportation of product theoretically if we've got a cultivator or a processor or the like. So do we want to look at that, or, I
Well,
mean, does anybody have any thoughts?
I feel
on-
like that's all gonna be commercial,
Okay,
transportation. And so nobody would be carrying it on the street.
okay.
I don't know.
Well, keep in mind that there's people that are gonna be licensed to administer this in people's homes. In fact, they've already started taking applications for that, the state has. So it's going to be transported on the roads by private individuals. Whether on the street or in a car.
Okay. So then I guess maybe we include that language that's saying exempting it to allow it to be transported on streets and sidewalks?
Okay, you've lost me. So I was still on number 3 that talked about parks.
It's still under 3.
Yeah, it's that last sentence of the red.
Oh, okay, so the exception was made, so we want to make that exception?
I think my question is, it should be only facilitators that are transporting this, right? It should be only facilitators that are,
No, not necessarily, because I think people can, you can get it if it's naturally obtained. You don't need to do it. I think you can go pick your own sort of thing and still have that legally possess it.
oh, I see what you're saying. For personal consumption.
Yeah,
For personal consumption, you can do that, but,
or however, yeah, and I don't know how the healers get their supply. I mean, it could be from a cultivator. They may go get that naturally. I believe both are allowed. Or, perhaps in the wild would be a better way to say that.
they'll probably be growing it or getting it. I think if you're a facilitator, you have to use a certain milligram that's okayed by the state, and it's coming out of a process. I don't think they're gonna be able to be using the natural,
Well, yeah, that's likely, but I do know for sure that individuals can get it from a cultivator, or they can get it, naturally, it says. And it's meant to be that in the wild, I think would be a better way to state it.
All right, do we want to hear from the audience? Does anyone have any opinion on the distance of 500 feet from the park? Okay. Thank you.
Well, he's going up just so I can understand, so are we leaving the transportation of small amounts, or are we not doing that?
I would include it.
Leave it? I don't know that you can't.
If I may, Transparks resident of Cortez, with the transportation, I see you guys going back and forth a little. There is going to be personal use issues, right? I mean, regular people who are not under medical care are still going to be likely to transport it up and down our streets. So, with the back to the recreation part of it, I think that's a real good idea to include the word recreation, including the golf course. But we do also have a facility here near the park. We also have another facility down here near Denny. And, excuse me? Oh, yeah, by the industrial park, you're gonna exempt that. But with the golf course, there's already a medical facility there. I mean, it's within the 500, it wouldn't be within the 500 boundary, but it would be within the 1500 boundary. I see we're discussing whether it should be passed to go with the 500 or change it to what we have with the marijuana facilities. Am I correct? The issue is between going with the 500 by the state recommendation or going with Colorado or Cortez's adopted marijuana policy on 1,500. Does that make sense?
The state doesn't have a regulation for
I
for
thought
the
that was
park.
a 5.
The state for educational facilities has 1,000, and we had discussed taking that up to 1,500 to match our marijuana regulation. And then additionally, even though the state doesn't regulate distance from parks, we talked about adding a 500-foot regulation from a park.
But we also talked about extending that to 1,500 feet, right?
Not from parks, just
Okay,
from-
okay, that was a clarification is the parks, but okay, yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
I have a question on transportation. We want to regulate transport? That what, maybe I got confused here somewhere.
No, we're just adding that, I mean, you're, like, if they're transporting by school, that's not, we're exempting that, 'cause that's using, the right of way.
Exempting it. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. I thought we were trying to regulate it, and I said, that really doesn't make much sense. So, good, thank you.
Okay, so I am not clear on exactly what we want in language here. I've got a note here that says, get a map of all parks for the council that we can do from GIS. However, all I've got that I'm certain on is 500 feet from a park with the carving out an exception for the PUD.
And the industrial park. So I think we're all in agreement on the 500 feet, except for that medical PUD and the industrial park, and then we just really want to use GIS to define public parks so that we can include the golf course, and if there's any other unique scenario that isn't quite a public park, but we would want it lumped in. So we're just kind of trying to define public park for this, as like maybe recreational or, we're just trying to understand the other scenarios out there that might not meet that public park criteria, but we would want to include it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does, it makes perfect sense. However, as a suggestion, instead of trying to go in and figure out every little thing that could happen, because we're not going to get them all. Perhaps we could go back and use broader language that any city-owned recreational or facility used for recreational or other purpose, other private purpose would be better. That way it kind of encompasses golf course, ball diamonds, BMX track.
Okay, I think, and that's what April was getting at, yeah.
So maybe instead of defining park and then getting into the weeds there, let's keep it broader so that in there. So also, council, one other thing to keep in mind as we go through this process, understand we're still one of the first in the state that is tackling this, and we're not going to get it 100% right. We don't have to. We can take our best shot at it, and as time goes on, and we can perfect it a little more later. So something to consider. So I'm just going to make a note here, consider some broad language, and then we can bring that back in July.
Okay.
If I may make a suggestion, we're talking about recreation. Can we go through there and restrict it to areas where children are also recreating? In other words, do you want to restrict with adult recreation, or do you want to restrict with where only, where children might show up? So, do the general, recreation areas so that you say, okay, this area will not include children, this area will. And that way you can, define the difference between adults. Because sometimes if adults bring their children, that would also be included where you would not want a shop that close.
I guess what areas would not be included right now then that children go to?
Right, and see, that's what I'm thinking as far as,
Because we do, in the first regulation we talked about with the schools, it also includes childcare centers.
right.
So totally understand and support what you're trying to say, but I do think it is covered in the first part. That
In
we
other
did.
words, that would include any recreation areas you think would include children at any point in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next?
Okay.
All right. Then next is regarding zoning district within the city of Cortez. The current marijuana regulations state that it can be in the CBD or central business district and the commercial district.
So you got to help me out a little bit. You said earlier that they may be going into their homes and doing this.
We're not going to be able to restrict that. What we're talking about is the actual business themselves, so either a cultivation center or a healing center.
So if this person operating the healing center decides that it's best to go to his client's residence, there's no prohibition on that.
Nope.
So if a guy is smart, he's not going to have a business, he's just going to go to their house.
Likely. But if they have a brick and mortar healing center and there's some opening in, either open or opening in Denver, in fact, I think it's this weekend, there's a whole convention around this, a week-long convention kicking off. But I do know there will be, at least in Denver, some brick and mortar places. Whether that happens here or not, I don't know, but all we can regulate is the brick and mortar, as it were, locations of that.
So we can't regulate the fact that they're conducting medical procedures in a residence.
Correct. Under the law, yeah.
Okay.
In fact, yeah, and I think Jenny Jarrow or Dr. Jarrow is probably going to tell you that that's likely to be the case around here anyway.
First quick tangent, didn't we vote to have our commercial highway changed to just commercial zoning?
Correct.
Okay, it just looks like our GIS needs to be updated. And then marijuana, you have here just CBD and the commercial, but what about industrial?
It can be allowed wherever council says we're just using marijuana as an example.
Okay, I'm just saying like how, we allow marijuana in the industrial, but you didn't include it in this list.
Right, because I don't think it's specifically mentioned in the code.
Oh,
So that's my understanding. So I'm going off of what the city attorney provided us.
oh, okay. I think you're right, yeah, you're right, okay. Okay, I'm okay with commercial, industrial, and even potentially neighborhood business, but the central business district, maybe not.
I would agree about the central business district. I wouldn't agree about the neighborhood business. I think that's, for us, is mostly a residential district. It's really not very different from
Residential
R1,
zone.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So I have a tangential question also. We require that our liquor licenses get a petition by the people who are in the area when they open a store, do we not? I mean, how does that process work? And so I'm a little concerned that there may be residential areas, mixed or however they may be, that people don't want this in their neighborhood. And so that's the only point I'm throwing out on the table. Can we do something like a petition required for them to open a business in a certain type of a residential area so that the neighbors can have a say as to whether hallucinogenic substances are consumed regularly in the house next door to them? Just a thought.
Well, council, I think what we were trying to do by saying it has to be in a specific zoning district is to remove residential from that list, so they can only be in certain districts, not in the house next door. So it could not be in a residential zone. I mean, council could allow that, but I mean, I just don't see it happening.
I think April's asking about the process of getting a petition when a new business, or when a new, like, liquor store goes in. What's that process? Why do we do it? What's the consequences of it?
Well,
They wouldn't be applying for a permit for, I mean, they would potentially be applying for a zoning permit, but they wouldn't be like a liquor store or a bar or restaurant that serves alcohol is applying for a permit to serve, and we don't have any control over
That's a
that
secondary
piece of it. It's a secondary permit, yeah.
That makes sense. Okay.
there you go.
Okay, so commercial, industrial, and then PUD?
Okay, commercial,
Well, we'd have to limit it to just, I mean, if the idea is to allow it potentially if they're interested in the hospital PUD, we would have to limit it to the hospital PUD, not PUDs.
Okay,
Because
yeah,
a
like
PUD could exist,
medical-related PUD.
could exist anywhere, yeah.
okay. Any other discussion on that, council?
I have another question. We haven't mentioned, at least I haven't seen here so far as place is distances from other stores or other healing centers. Are we looking at having a distance from another healing center so we don't get a large conglomeration of them in a certain area? Just throwing out an idea.
I think the state regulation in 2 has that.
I did not see that in my review of the state regs.
From the nearest property line of the land use, no, actually, I'm sorry, I think you're right, yeah.
I didn't see it anywhere, and I looked through everything looking for that.
Okay, I'm gonna have to consult with the city attorney on that one. I will make a note here, and we can talk about that. So, I think that would be under 2, and then, question,
So distance would be the question, and then the other question I had along this is that my understanding is that we do, as a home rule, have the ability to restrict the number of healing centers to limit density. And that hasn't been addressed.
I'm not sure if we do or not. We will consult with that and bring it back to council next month. Okay, so back to number 4. I have down here commercial, industrial, and hospital PUD. Anything else? Okay. All right, I will take that. So, moving on to manor regulation.
Oh, sorry, hold on. Does anyone have an opinion on the zoning that we're suggesting? I guess I do. Okay.
So, we're not speaking about dispensaries or retail stores here, right? We're talking about healing centers, okay? This isn't gonna be an establishment where anyone off the street can come in and say, hey, I need some product, and gonna walk out the door with it. These are healing centers where a patient is going to come in and receive a treatment, stay for X amount of hours so we don't have any issues leaving, and that's what we're talking about, right? Not a liquor store or
Correct,
so I mean that should alleviate some of the problems with some of the people, in the neighborhoods and things about the zoning. I think that should set maybe the council at a little bit of ease too, that it's not going to be an in and out recreational type establishment in your zone, because we have a lot of zoning where it's commercial industrial, or not commercial industrial, commercial residential. I think my place is zoned that way. I'm not sure, it's not my place, but where I rent is zoned that way. But, I think that could kind of lay to rest a little apprehension of, hey, there's gonna be a dispensary opening next to my house, and people are gonna be running in and out left and right, I guess that was just what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings up a good point. Can we look, because There's another, like, we'll call it controlled substance that's more similar to this than marijuana, the ketamine treatments. And so like in Durango, what zonings do they allow those in? Just kind of looking at examples of that. Because that's where you go in and you have a treatment, on site.
But I think the difference with the ketamine is that it's being administered by medical professionals per se, and these are being administered by facilitators who don't necessarily have any medical training.
Okay. I'm
And I
surprised.
think, and they're they have to carry malpractice insurance, and they have state regulations and federal regulations that oversee the administration of that treatment.
Okay,
So that'd be the difference, I would think.
okay. But still, thank you.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, manner restrictions. As previously stated, council, the administrative code covers an awful lot of good information regarding manner. They've put a lot of thought into this, and council may wish to adopt most, if not all, of the language in there. But we will start with number 1. All doorways, windows, and other openings of a natural medicine business shall be located, covered, or screened in such a manner to prevent a view from the interior of any exterior public or semi-public area. All activities shall occur indoors. So, under the Colorado Administrative Rules section 213, the covering and location to prevent view to the interior is not regulated by the state, and the outdoor activity for healing centers permitted by the state. So, council will have to decide whether or not they want to allow outdoor portions of this, or just strictly indoors.
Can I ask a question? Who wrote this? Because I feel like whoever wrote this was trying to make it more, like, the regulations tighter than what the state is providing. And I feel like how come just what the state regulated wasn't just presented to us and then we kind of get to come to the conclusions whether we want it more restrictive or not?
Council, I believe that Mr. Coleman and his assistant went out to other communities who either have something or proposed legislation on this. So this is just what others are doing. This is kind of the mean of what others are doing.
Okay.
I'm
I was just
completely
curious.
open, and I will do whatever council wants. If all we want to do is go with the state regulation, I'm happy to do whatever.
I have a comment on this in red here. It says here, the covering or location to prevent view into the interior is not regulated by the state. That's in direct contradiction to what I'm reading in my Colorado Municipal League Update Legal Corner section. It states clearly that doorways, windows, and other openings must be covered or screened in such a manner to prevent seeing into the facility from any exterior public or semi-public area. So I think that is not true.
Straight from, okay.
That is straight from the state. So that is straight from the state. But there's one thing that I have a question here, or I'd like to have some counsel on, mentions that if a healing center contains outdoor areas, the boundaries must be clearly marked with visible signage or barriers, and the licensee must take reasonable measures to mitigate risk to participants. So I think one thing is that we're talking, in the general topic, it's called natural medicine business, and I'm kind of referring specifically to the healing center, right? So someone goes into a healing center right now and takes a dose of this and they're actively hallucinating. I couldn't imagine anything worse than being stuck in a building. So I'm all for them being outside and being in an area that's more natural. But I do believe that they should have a fenced area there to keep them from wandering off or from other people coming in contact with them inadvertently, like children. So that's my concern. So I don't mind if they do it outside, but make them have a fence around them and that they're supervised while outside.
Yeah, that's a great point. When I read that, when it talks about signage, I almost visualize just being out in the open and having, signs around the perimeter, and here you can walk by and see someone.
Right. And we know people don't read signs.
Yeah, yeah.
I would agree about that. I think a fully enclosed fenced as opposed to like a velvet rope that says natural medicine area or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that concept of like, if they've got an outdoor area and it's fenced, we can let them use that.
When you say fenced, like
A barrier, or I mean, how are barriers defined?
well,
about,
that,
like, in the city code? Because a pool fence is appropriate, because nobody's, I mean, that's high enough so no one's gonna climb in without significant effort.
Yeah.
So could we use whatever that has?
I'm having a really hard time hearing you, Counselor, I'm sorry.
Pool fence, do we have regulations regarding pool fences?
Not necessarily that I'm aware of off the top of my head, but I guess where I'm coming from, and instead of going to another regulation, do we want, because a fence can be a wire run between two posts. You see what I'm saying? Do we want something that's an actual barrier that is visually and physically blinding? A wooden fence or something that's going to make it so you can't see through and tall enough you can't just walk over?
Yeah, I guess what's the stronger language, barrier or fence?
Well, a fence is a barrier, so I think you could call it either one, and we can massage that language. But I would recommend more of a barrier, because a building could be a barrier, a shack.
Okay.
It could be a vehicle. But we want that to be visually blind as well.
Yeah, just like the indoor parts.
Okay, I'm writing. I must be a physical barrier, no
That prevents
visibility. Okay.
We do a minimum of 6 foot?
We absolutely, you can do whatever council says.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any thoughts from the audience? Okay, great. We'll move on to entrances, parking lots, and exterior walkways.
Okay, next on manner is primary entrances, parking lots, and exterior walkways of natural medicine business shall be clearly illuminated with downward-facing security lights to provide after-dark visibility for employees and customers of natural medicine businesses. So lighting of certain areas outside the natural business is not regulated by the state. The relevant code does say that part of the security plan that each licensed premises must include is the identification of exterior lighting, any exterior camera angles, and protocols for maintenance of lighting and cameras. In section 5.9-3 of the Cortez Land Use Code, it addresses the submission of an exterior lighting plan as part of a requirement for any site plan review application. So it would pretty much have to comply with city code anyway, or the land use code. So therein comes in your downward-facing lights on the suggested language. Other than that, the needs to be part of the security plan.
Okay. Do we not want to address cameras in this because the state already does?
Yeah, I wouldn't in here. I just, honestly, I think, trying to keep it simple, it needs to be, reasonably illuminated for patrons and thing. I mean,
Yeah, safety and security.
yeah, safety and security.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Do you guys have any problems with the suggested language?
No.
Okay.
Anyone in the audience? Sure. This is why we have this night. We want to hear from you.
So on the lighting thing, as a resident of Cortez, these could possibly leak into the residential, commercial type areas. I live next to the parking lot in town where we put up the new beautiful lights in the parking lot, which are grand from the flashers that I had there, but as a resident, you know, where I live, and then somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to put one of these in, but then we start blasting them with lights. You know, these, again, are not dispensaries. They're not bars. These are places where people will go and be supervised, and they will be regulated by people who have licensure and professional licensure, like psychiatrists, therapists, and the like. I see you shaking your head, Ms. Randall. Would you please enlighten me?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Let me get that for you, sir. So in the code, let me get to the right page. Let me get to the right page so that you're on top here. There's two separate categories of facilitators. There's a regular facilitator that goes through, it's called just a facilitator in brief, and they go through a total of 210 hours of learning. And they are not to engage in psychotherapy or practice medicine or any other secondary profession. So they're just lay people that go through this training. And then they
But they're going through 210 hours
They're going-
of training. That is significant. That's as significant as college credit.
So the second category, the 210 hours, includes 150 hours of book training and 40 hours of supervision and 50 hours of consultation availability.
That sounds almost like a nursing program to me.
The second category is called a clinical facilitator,
Okay.
and that one is different. They have to have a MD, DO, Associate Advanced Practice Nursing certification, NP or PA certification. They can also be a psychologist or a social worker and a clinical social worker, a marriage and family counselor, or a licensed professional counselor, or a licensed addiction counselor. So there's two separate kinds. But yes, you're correct in that they've gone through some training.
And also, the second part that you said is more likely what we're going to be dealing with. I mean, as the city council, we're going to work to prevent Joe Blow from coming in here and saying, I'm a healer, I'm gonna make mushrooms here and there, and that. I get that. But what I'm saying is these people are not just Joe Blow. They do have to have some sort of licensure and training. That was what I
And
wanted
sign
to
off
clarify.
from an organization, yeah.
That's just what I wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
to make sure. It was clear.
And then your concern about lighting, I think our land use code addresses that, about like flooding of light onto other properties.
Yeah. I mean, light pollution is a problem in all cities, you know, and just that would be my only real issue with the lighting would be flooding our property, you know. And thanks for clearing for that, Ms. Randall.
Yeah. Okay, moving to number 3.
Okay, suggested language. All natural medicine businesses shall have a security plan for secure storage of natural medicine and natural medicine products that is approved by the State of Colorado Natural Medicine Division, and shall provide the plan to the city prior to beginning operation, and shall provide any updated plans to the city within 10 business days. So, this item regulates providing the security plan to the city. However, the administrative rule states that the documentation demonstrating that the address for the proposed licensed premises is permitted under the local jurisdictions applicable zoning laws for cultivation, manufacturing, etc. And then the next part of that code of 213-1 states that when the licensee is not operating as a natural medicine business, the licensee must ensure that all regulated natural medicine and regulated medicine products are appropriately secured. So very similar there, but all this does is adds to the state code, and the state administrative code, I should say, and then make sure that they share that not only with the state of Colorado, but with the city.
Makes sense?
Who's going to be reviewing these plans at the city level?
It'll be the city planner
Okay,
and the building official,
okay.
but it'll be the planning and zoning function that handles that.
So my understanding is that the security plan, the lighting, the handling of this, all of the medications and all that is also going to be reviewed by the state before they grant licensure to the facility. They come in and look at our rules and our ordinances regarding this, and then they make sure that they're doing it also. Is that, I think that's how.
Now, I'm just going to say presumably, because that's still a little vague with what the state of Colorado is going to do. Another piece of that, and I'll just use it as an example and not to go there right now, but fees and how that looks. So it's still a little vague on what, Colorado's still feeling around in the dark per se too. So. Any other comments on that one, council?
Anyone from the audience?
Okay, next.
Okay. Yeah, and then the next one we're talking about is video surveillance, if you. Okay. Because that one was about storage. Is your comment about storage or cameras?
Well, it's storage.
Okay, then please.
And the thing is, I mean, we're talking about how we're gonna enforce storage. You know, we're also gonna have some people out there who are growing personally, right? Because there are places in town that are selling spores that are not for fruiting, they say, you know, but they are being sold now in town without regulation, you know. So, I mean, we're gonna have this issue, and I understand that these people don't want to be broken into, but I mean, what kind of storage are we talking about? Like similar to what we have in the dispensary?
Well, it's the state that regulates how it should be stored. We're just saying if you're going to change your storage, you got to let us know, not just the state.
All right, so it's
Yeah, so-
under the state regulation and you're
Yeah,
adding-
and then like
All right, I just-
personal use and personal grow, there's not much we can do about that because there's not much we
No,
can do
yeah.
about marijuana as well, except
I understand.
restricting how many plants.
And yeah, that was my question is how are they gonna do that?
Yeah.
Except that is still a felony to manufacture Schedule 1 substance.
Federally it is. I get that, but
State it's against the law as well.
I was unaware. Like I said, I'm unaware of a lot of these things, but they're gonna be doing that. They are going to be breaking federal law and state law if they're doing this then, right? I mean, that's really quasi there, because if it's still against state law, why are we discussing it? If the
We're all
cultivation
just
of it.
figuring this out together.
I get that, but we're doing this a long ways from the Capitol, you know? I mean, we're groundbreaking here, and I'm curious, you know, as to how we're gonna go through with this, and I want to be a part of it. So that's why I'm here, and I'm curious and trying to ask questions. I know we don't have a lot of people here, you know, for or against otherwise, you know, I'm just curious. I really don't, you know, have an angle here. I'm just, you know, really concerned about, for one, the safety of the children of the town, and, you know, other things to set general people, you know, to rest on it. You know, it's not going to be a wild party like, say, other places that have legalized drugs. You know, it's still going to be in a controlled environment, and you know, I'd like to point that out, but I'd also like to be involved in the safety aspect of that too. I agreed with some sort of a fence and then a privacy barrier. You know, 8-foot privacy fence where the people can't get out, nobody can get in, and there's also, you know, the building. You know, I think that, you know, there's some real good discussion going on here, and I'm learning a lot, and I hope my suggestions are coherent at best. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, this next one is very similar to the last. The state administrative code is pretty clear on what all must be used in the way of video cameras. It mentions in here that the applicant shall install a fully operational video surveillance and camera recording system. Rule 213-1 states the camera coverage is required for all areas identified as restricted areas, including entrances, exits to restricted areas, and any area storing video surveillance equipment or recordings. The cameras shall be placed to provide a clear, unobstructed view of areas where regulated natural medicine is grown, sampled, weighed, packaged, I think we're missing a comma there, tagged, tested, stored, manufactured, and prepared for transport or disposal, whether in restricted or administration areas. And then it talks about cameras must be placed and angled to allow clear and certain identification of any individual and activities in the restricted area. I'm not sure exactly how we achieve that because it's almost impossible if you're overhead. So, but that's what the state regulation is. This would merely say that we adopt that. In fact, I would say for our code, let's just adopt what the state code is and keep it simple.
I'd like to go back to what Councilwoman person Randall said. Is natural medicine business also including the manufacturing? Is that all included? Is that all inclusive? Or do we need to define it? Because we keep saying natural medicine business, but this really applies to the manufacturing. And do we need to define what that is?
They are, and they will be defined in the actual code, and they are. There's two different ones. There's healing centers, and then there's cultivation, and that can be separate, or they can be the same thing. Under the same roof, just different parts of a building or something.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that our language is clear. It's not just where you go to get healed, it's also the manufacturing facility as
Correct.
well.
Yep.
Well, and I think if we do the state language, which is in red, it would address that.
Correct.
Okay.
I do have a question. It doesn't state how long these have to be held for, how long these tapes have to be held for.
You know what? I don't have that information. I don't think it does.
Okay, and I think we've seen circumstances in all sorts of odd circumstances where it wasn't held long enough or whatever. So I
Right.
think we should consider a time frame on that. And if, the only other thing is, and I don't know whether this gets into the administration part of it or not, but in the areas where people are receiving treatment for, let's say they're having a dose administered and they're outside in the yard and something bad happens, either self-inflicted or accidental or whatever, is that not something we'd want to kind of also have at least have them have record of for the first 30 days or something? Just bad ideas.
Let me ask the question. I don't know. I think that's going to be way outside of our scope, but I can certainly ask.
Yeah, at least the outside areas might be a good thing where they might have contact with outside people. I don't know if you can do it on the treatment side, inside, I don't know that would be reasonable, but perhaps the outside areas because it is associated with security.
Yeah, and if they're out there and it's in a, obviously the fenced-in area that council has kind of described that you would be outdoors in, that would also, under this code, have to be video recorded. So, but I don't know that there's anything in here that I've read that says, well, I mean, you could record it, but how long do you have to keep that? And I don't know that's in our scope, but I'll ask.
Okay. Thank you.
So that we don't get off a track here, our whole purpose for this meeting is the safety and security of the citizens of Cortez.
That's correct.
So if we have an incident that occurs, if it's just within that facility, I guess you would say it was really none of our business. If they get outside and harm somebody, then it certainly is.
Well, it's still our business. I mean, because if something happens inside a bar, that's still the police and.
Absolutely, but this is not, this is a health situation. This is ordered by the state. The state is saying, you are going to do this whether you want to or not. And it's for health reasons. So I'm sure they have a Privacy Act, they have all of these issues. And I just think we need to stay on track, and I would love to have surveillance on all of it. And I would love to have reports on when they had a bad reaction, bad client, bad whatever, because it may save us down the road from getting sued or somebody worse getting injured because of the way they're running their establishment. However, we're told we have to do this, and our only regulation is for the safety of the citizens of Cortez.
That would still be addressed in, business, like the business would be liable for that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes, but if we,
That's why we're doing this now, is to eliminate our liability. And I don't know if I'm getting across what I'm trying to say is I don't like it, but we're going to have to deal with it. We have no choice. And our function is to make sure the citizens of Cortez are safe. That's it. That's it.
But I tend to agree with Councilmember Sproul on that. I mean, if we're truly treating them like health centers, then there's all kinds of negative things that happen in a hospital, all kinds of incidents that occur, and so those don't get necessarily reported to us unless there's a criminal act. So I think we need to consider that.
Just to answer the question about data collection, about law enforcement incidents and adverse health events and healthcare system impacts and consumer protection claims and behavioral health impacts, all this is supposed to be monitored by the Department of Revenue via the health system, via the county health system. So, and that hasn't kind of happened yet, or at least it's in the process of being developed. But anyway, those sort of incidents are supposed to be happening. And I would counter and say that if you have an incident in the emergency room, for example, where somebody attacks a nurse, it is a law enforcement issue.
Right.
And their cameras are used, that are in there, and can be used in a criminal proceeding to follow that. So that's all.
I mean, but that's a criminal act, but if like someone has a bad reaction to, say, ibuprofen in the hospital, like we don't need to know that. And so if someone has a bad reaction to this type of medicine, like that's not really up to us
No, that's
to
not.
regulate as well.
That's going to be followed by the Department of Health. That's going to be
Okay,
regulated.
yeah, that's
gonna
what,
be
that's
followed.
their job,
But
okay.
what I'm kind of referring to back to the cameras outside, back to the original premise for
Yep.
The reason I would love to see the video cameras is just for protection. Somebody coming in there stealing, robbing, whatever. And that's why I'd like to see that, is to protect the innocent people. Even if they're in there for a treatment and somebody robs the place, it would be nice. I think all of our marijuana places are pretty well secured, and I would like to see this. I'd like to see them have it. Now, if we're privy to that information, privy to that cameras, we'd have to get a search warrant, of course. So it's not for us, but it's for them.
Okay, and I think actually that gets addressed in number 5, what we're gonna move on to next, because what we were just talking about was like the cameras on all entrances and exits. This next one's talking about an alarm system for windows and rooms and walls and roofs and skylights and storage. Right?
Correct. And the suggested language is a little bit more restrictive or explanatory, perhaps, than the state code. But it makes sense. I mean, the suggested language seems to, in this case, do just a little bit better than the state code. The only other thing I can see in there that the state code has that we do not have in our suggested language that the alarm system must notify the licensee or authorized personnel in the event of unauthorized entry.
Okay, I'd be in favor of adding that language to ours. Okay, sorry, any,
The alarm company just alerting the owner of the establishment, is that what you just said?
well, yeah, adding this like last sentence in red that the state has. That instead of, I think that it's basically saying instead of it just making a noise, it has to actually alert somebody that's off premises. That may be off premises.
As long as it's just not the property owner, because if he's broke into, he could certainly slide that under the, count it off as a business loss, even though somebody just stole 5 pounds of psilocybin mushrooms. I think law enforcement needs to be notified.
Can we regulate that?
If an alarm goes off? Okay.
Yeah, can we add that or regulate that?
I'm not sure. I don't know that we can require them to report on that, but I can check.
Most of the alarms go into dispatch right now, but you can get them to where it just goes to the homeowner or the business owner.
Yeah, they do. And generally what happens is it depends on the alarm. There's 1,000 of them out there. But a lot of times they'll go to the responsible person, that person doesn't answer or whatever, the next person, and that doesn't answer, and then dispatch. Sometimes it's everybody all at once. But generally that's a marketing thing by the alarm company saying, hey, it goes directly to the police versus we require that. In fact, most places, in larger cities and stuff, they actually are fining people. Where I came from, we fined people if they had more than 2 a year because we kept getting so many false drops. But that was a marketing thing.
Could we have language in there that says if you have a loss that you must report to the police?
That's a good one, and let me ask that.
That police background.
And that might be covered in the state code. I'm almost positive. But let me ask. We might want to just put that on ours.
Great. Any thoughts or? Okay. Anyone from the audience? Please.
So with the reporting of a product being stolen, the pharmacy, Walgreens, they're going to call the police if they get robbed. Any other legitimate business person would do the same thing. I think with the surveillance, that with the HIPAA laws, with the medical side of it, you're gonna run into some quagmire there. I know there's a lot of quagmire, but with that, I agree with Mr. Sproul wholeheartedly on, if there's a loss or not even if one crumb gets taken out in a robbery, or not robbery, burglary, any type of situation where something was stolen, that absolutely would need to go reported, because that's going to be where we don't want it, out on the streets of Cortez. But as far as the video goes, I do want to say something. If we do require the video and it is able to be done, let's do something about the quality of the video. We have cameras, we can see a frog in Lake Powell. And the video evidence that I see, I'm sorry, on the Cortez Police Department's page, the county pages, they may come from private security, but some of the businesses in town are guilty of this as well. If you can't see their face or get any type of description off of the video evidence, it's not worth having those systems in place, because it's going to be disappointing to law enforcement, and it's just going to create, like I said, the cameras are going to, I think, cause a bit of problem with the HIPAA laws. And one more thing I want to add is these are gonna be healing centers. We're not talking about house parties. You know, how many people are they going to allow? I don't know. And can we regulate? How many people can we service at a time? I don't want somebody having eight or 10 frying people next to my house or next to my business either. You know, one-on-one, how's that gonna work? Do we know?
I don't know.
I'm sorry I came so unprepared. I wished I'd have read the statute of the state, that this came on so quickly. I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, he's ahead. So this is for me a clarification, because you guys are not looking at criminals. I know all of us know about bar hopping. And I can see somebody bar hopping against different centers if we have more than one. Are you guys concerned about somebody bar hopping with the different types of centers? That way, one particular center would say, you don't have that much. You combine 3 of them together, then you can have more of a chance of a bad reaction. So would the videos help with identifying the people who do that, or that's not something to be concerned with right now?
That is not something we can regulate.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the way the rule set is like they've got to stay at a facility for a certain period of time if they've administered a dose. So they can't just like take it and leave and then in a half hour be at the next place. Okay.
Okay, next one is storage. This is very similar. We're suggesting a little bit more restrictive language. The state only states that after cultivation, regulated natural medicine should follow best practices for storage prior to packaging. That doesn't tell us much. We are suggesting that all storage of natural medicine should be located within a permanent building on a foundation, not in a trailer, tent, or motor vehicle.
I think that's a good regulation. The one question I had is, are we clear enough that storage and transport are different things? So we're not, if someone is transporting, they are still storing it in their vehicle while they transport it. I don't know if I'm being clear, but if someone is transporting things from a cultivation center to a healing center, or a cultivation place to a healing center, it has to be stored in the vehicle while they are transporting it. So are we saying that you can't do that with that language?
No, and that's actually not considered storage. Storage means I place it somewhere and have a reasonable expectation that it'll be there when I return.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So what I'm taking from number 6 is that all storage of natural medicine shall be in a permanent building, so not in a trailer and the like. Are we extending this to natural medicine businesses in general, that natural medicine businesses should not happen unless it's in a permanent building? Is that sort of the same thing as?
Well, at least the storage part of it. I mean, if they want to have a healing tent out somewhere with the suggested or with the required fence that we're going to have, they could do that. But, you know, that would involve somehow taking and securing that within a building somewhere else, so.
So do we want to say that all healing centers should be in a building? Permanent building on a foundation and not in a trailer?
I think we already are. We just can't store it. What we're saying is you can't take it out back and stick it in the trailer, sort of thing. We're already basically saying the healing center has to be brick and mortar, or the cultivation has to be brick and mortar. The council is saying that you can have an outdoor place, but it's got to be secure, basically. So, but I think this is wisdom, because I can see somebody sticking in their car. I can see somebody leaving it all kinds of places. This says inside the permanent building.
I didn't see it in, I'm sorry, but I didn't see it in our regulations that it had, all businesses had to be in a brick and mortar building. Is that in here already?
I don't know where it is in front, but that's what the business is called. It has to be a brick and mortar to be one of these places. You can't just go stick up a tent somewhere it has to be a brick and mortar location.
I hear what you're saying, but I'm just saying, show me. I don't see where it's in here, and I don't see that it's in the state.
Okay.
So
We,
that
we,
would be
but we, keep in mind, council, we don't have the full thing. We're really trying to hone in on time, place, and manner. We don't have a draft ordinance in front of us.
Okay,
So yes, it's not in here.
okay.
Any thoughts from the audience? Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to air filtration and ventilation.
Okay, and then all the state code says is that the filters for air conditioning, ventilation, and air filtration systems should be cleaned and replaced regularly. And then this is really, it says in here, and I'm not sure what this means exactly, this regulates an air filtration system which controls odor. We're trying to be a little more specific with natural medicine businesses shall use an air filtration and ventilation system designed to ensure that odors from natural medicine, etc., are confined to the premises and are not detectable beyond property boundaries on which the business is located.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
They certainly don't do that with marijuana.
Okay.
Moving on? Okay.
Oh, okay, good. Huh. Okay, now we're on disposal.
Okay, the next one is secure disposal. And then this restricts or prohibits, or under the state code, restricts or prohibits disposing of natural medicine products in an exterior refuse container. So you can't just go out front and toss it in the city refuse bin. So the administrative rule states the waste disposal for psilocybin products that are fit for human consumption, which must be clearly stored and disposed of, are on a license of disposed of on the licensed premises or transferred to another licensee for disposal. Licensees must store regulated natural medicine waste in either a restricted area or a locked waste receptacle located on the licensed premises until it is disposed of. Then the Rule 2213-1, this 3120E states, natural medicine waste consisting of psilocybin or psilocin or psilocybin that are unfit for human consumption, which may be stored prior to final disposal in a locked dumpster or locked receptacle outside of the licensed premises, but still that would exclude city refuse bins. So we're suggesting natural medicine businesses shall provide secure disposal of natural medicine and natural medicine product remnants or byproducts. Natural medicine and natural medicine product remnants or byproducts shall be placed in an exterior refuse container. I would suggest on that one that we defer a little bit more to state code and tighten that up to a locked exterior container. Yeah, it shall be not there or in the exterior. Okay, so we're not saying put it into an exterior container, sorry. So we're not even allowing that. So, yeah, okay. Good on that one?
How are they supposed to dispose of it?
Good question.
They can have it incinerated. There's several different ways. It can be incinerated. The hospital has the disposable people that come around and take their biohazards, and
Right.
so there's ways.
Okay. They wouldn't just drive it down to the landfill.
Yeah, you don't want to drive down the landfill and chunk it out.
Well, yeah, and I think the intent is not so that our refuse workers don't get accidentally exposed, children, others, and honestly, we dump things on the ground once in a while when we're dumping trash, and so we're trying to avoid that.
Does the state recognize it as a hazardous material, or do we know that?
They recognize that it needs to be disposed of properly. I don't think they're using the words hazardous material.
Because if it's acid, you could just touch it and it absorbs through your skin. And acids.
Yeah, and I don't know the properties of this, and I don't know if that's possible. I suggest that most things can be absorbed through the skin, so probably.
Yeah, well, we're covered if we say it's not to be put in an exterior container. And
Yeah.
they must dispose of it in a proper manner.
Right. Okay, number 9? Process, or see, the Rule 213, 3105 states natural medicine product manufacturer, the manufacturer's regulated natural medicine byproduct or products using hazardous substances or dangerous chemicals is not permitted to be at the same licensed premises as the healing center. And we're suggesting the same, but we're just saying that processing of natural medicine that includes the use of these hazardous materials and without limitation, flammable, combustible, et cetera, is just strictly prohibited.
Do we have any businesses in town that currently use those combustible liquids, carbon dioxide, and liquefied petroleum gases such as butane in the process of anything that's being made in town now?
I mean, there are,
Probably the cultivation.
well, I was gonna say, like carbon dioxide, I mean, there's bars that have carbon dioxide for seltzer and things like that. But I think this is above that. They're specifically prohibited from using any of those materials.
And I think some of this, what they're using, if I understand it right, and I don't understand the science exactly, but I think these would be solvents that would be used as part of making the actual, putting the medicine in a certain form.
If I'm reading this correctly, the state prohibits it from the healing center, not the manufacturing location.
Correct. So you can't
So
cross over.
we're prohibiting it
Completely.
everywhere. And if they use one of these processes, you're telling them they can't manufacture it.
Correct.
Do we know how they process some of this stuff? Do they use any of these things? The state is saying it's just not allowed in the healing center, which is completely understandable. But if they use it to manufacture,
Yeah, and we might just want to adopt the state rule on this.
I'd say so too, because like in the industrial park, we allow these hazardous materials.
May I say something on production? Just because, John,
Sorry, you're getting your steps in.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm perfectly fine with it. It's plain to see that we're following a lot of marijuana law or rules as far as this goes. I just want to address that we are definitely dealing with an apple and a rattlesnake. Okay, I mean they're completely different. But as far as producing the stuff grows, I kind of want to set everybody's mind at ease. It is a fungus. It is a mushroom. It's propagated on ryeberry, any grain that's susceptible to mold and fungus growth. You put it in there, you grow that, you put it in a substrate of coconut coir, vermiculite, and gypsum, which is all natural. And you can't really use any fungicides or anything on it, you're going to kill it. So the production and the final product, I don't know what they're going to sell as a final product, but what I do know about psilocybin mushrooms is that the common way to ingest them is through oral, with eating them whole, tea, or capsules. And there are really no other viable ways to ingest psilocybin without taking it in. They don't inject it. It's not concentrated. It can be concentrated, but not with what you guys are talking about, like with the marijuana. Marijuana is definitely used as solvents and whatnot. I don't know of any manufacturers in the county or city proper. But, yeah, the disposal of it shouldn't really be a problem. Only the fruiting bodies contain psilocybin. My mycelium does not contain any psilocybin, none. It's the fruiting bodies what makes the psilocybin, and it needs to be cured, and there's quite a process. So just for y'all to know that it's similar to marijuana, kind of, but, it's not, there's not as many ways to concentrate it down and, make things so much higher in psilocin and the other active ingredients in these funguses to, I've lost where I was going with that. I do apologize. I have a problem with that. But at any rate, it's, with genetics, yes, you can raise the potency. But to take it down and concentrate it, I mean, that's probably something that is done, but not in that manner. So just to set that at ease, there's not any.
We appreciate that, but the reason I leaned over and asked Councilperson Randall what I wanted to know, there is not just psilocybin. There's going to be other natural medicines that are used.
I am well aware of that, but my main concern is with the psilocybin. That is definitely the strongest substance we're talking about. I promise. I mean, there's some kratom out there and things like that. They don't hold a candle what psilocybin does. And I'm not telling you from a scientific research paper that I did. I'm telling you from experience. As a young man, I experienced several experiences on drugs that are legal and not. But what I'm trying to say is, you guys seem not completely educated, and I'm not saying that I am. I'm not saying that I'm an expert. What I'm trying to say is maybe alleviate some of the things that you guys are thinking about what's going to be thrown in our refuse for our trash men and things like that. I just, kind of wanted to settle that just a little bit. It's fertilizers and things aren't used as well. So, I just kind of want to clarify that. Like I said, I'm not really pushing for this, but, I think it does need clarified.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yeah. You're saying we're comparing state regulations to what ours. So I think in summary is what he's saying is like there's little to no risk that these hazardous materials are going to be used in cultivation, but I think we should still allow them for the cultivation part because we allow propane in the industrial park. We allow these hazardous materials for other processes, so I don't know why we would restrict it for just this business.
Well,
I get the healing center, that makes sense, because those are going to be in commercial areas.
Yeah, and I think perhaps the only rational reason that I'm aware of that you would want to keep them separate is you don't want an accidental ingestion, especially with somebody under the influence of whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So. Okay, 10. This really is talking about ensuring that odors do not escape. The state is pretty vague, and it just says filters for air conditioning, ventilation, air filtration must be cleaned and replaced regularly. The suggested language goes a little deeper in that, although I'm really not understanding kind of the last portion of the sentences presented there, or exterior walls of the processing facility associated with processing natural medicine. So if, because they got listed as processing facility where it talks about property boundaries, and then processing facilities talking about the associated with processing. So I'm assuming what this maybe should have been is the healing center for property line, or walls for property center.
And I just want to make sure the PowerPoint's on the next slide.
Okay, I think I did move that,
Oh,
sorry.
perfect. Oh, you're controlling it. Okay,
Yep, I am.
sorry. What's the difference between this and 7? Is one addressing the healing center and the other addressing cultivation? Sorry, did you?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think this one, one says that you've got to have the system, and then the other one says you've got to maintain it, basically.
Yeah, can we just combine those?
That way you'd be adding the processing facility as well as the healing center, so that would get them both.
Okay. All right, number 11, there is no state regulation on this one, but we're suggesting that the be required to abide by the or the city land use code and city building codes, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I do think that we should consider additional regulation on signage for these businesses as part of that. So I don't know if that would be there. I kind of thought of it as in number 12 of avoiding anything that would be attractive to children. But I think we also want to avoid. I think we just need to think of how we would like to regulate the signage for these businesses.
Okay?
The state is pretty specific in that, in the regulations that they put together for signage and advertising and the like, they're saying that it's not going to target children, so they're pretty tight on that. The one thing I would add to that, Rob, or on your thought, is that I think that any business, be it a administration facility or a healing center or a cultivator or whatever, should have the facilitators' names who are practicing out of that facility should be listed on the door or on the signage some way, so that there's some recognition that way. I don't know if that would extend to the owner or not. It's a thought I had. I don't know how that would work.
I think we can certainly put that in here and then talk about it. I don't see why we couldn't. I don't know if that's required for doctors now, but you do see it a lot.
I think we're in a different territory here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, anything else, council? Moving on, number 12. Okay, the Rule 3305 states the labels must not use word candy or candies. And then 30356D states that the regulated natural medicine product cannot be labeled or packaged in a manner that would cause confusion as to whether the product was trademarked food product. So, and then we're suggesting that natural medicine products shall not produce edible products in a gummy form or other confectionery, candy, chocolate form that would be attractive to children. So I think we're kind of emulating the old candy cigarette issue here and trying to get.
I'd like to add to that the facilitators are not allowed to administer any confectionery form of the medicine either. That way it prevents it from getting out into the community if they get it from a source that's outside of our community. So I just think I don't want any confectionery form of this out there for children to consume if they accidentally come across it.
Good.
I have a question, maybe you can answer. Do they regulate children? Are they going to be subject to this treatment?
The way the current legislation or the ordinance or whatever you want to call it is states that you have to be 21 years of age or older to participate in the personal consumption of it. It kind of skirts around it a little bit when it gets to the healing centers, but I'm reading what I'm interpreting as 21 years of age also to consume it in a healing center.
Okay. Good. I think that's a really good one there. So 13, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay, on this one, the city attorney's suggesting that we write in there after you've received natural medicine, that you can't operate a motor vehicle or mechanized equipment for 4 hours afterwards. I think that we need to debate that a little bit. Number one, that's already covered in the state DUI law, that, it doesn't say drunk driving, it's impaired driving. And so that's already covered, and this would not be enforceable under that. In fact, I would argue to the city attorney that this perhaps provides a loophole for those who get caught doing that. So I think it's something for council to consider. I'd love to hear your comments, but I think the city attorney and I need to chat a little bit about this. I'm not a legal person, but I have an understanding of how it works.
There's no way you could enforce that. We have laws against it, which says, are you under the influence of alcohol or narcotic to a degree that you're unable to safely operate a motor vehicle? So if they leave there after 4 hours and they seem to be fine, if they're safely able to operate a motor vehicle, they are okay by law to operate that motor vehicle. If they can pass a roadside sobriety test, they're good to go.
Okay, so we're talking about eliminating this one?
Yeah, I think we need to debate it a little bit more. Let staff kind of handle that, and we'll bring it back in July.
Yeah, didn't we mention that they're held at that healing center for a specific time frame? I would assume that's to make sure that they're
Well, they're not by law right now. I've never seen it. I have not read anything that states that they're required to be held at a healing center for a certain amount of time after they're given a dose. I mentioned it when we were talking about it when it first came up on the first workshop or whatever in the last opportunity we had. So basically, this is where we get into a gray area, I think, and I certainly agree with City Manager Sanders about our ability to enforce this separate from impaired driving laws. I agree with that 100%, so I'm not going in that direction, but I want to pursue or at least talk about the option of saying in our city that once you administer a dose of this orally, that you have to be under the supervision of someone, some responsible adult, for 4 hours afterwards. And the reasoning behind my thought process there is because of the half-life of the drug. Half-life in concept is the time that it takes 50% of that drug to clear out of your system from the time it's first administered. If you're talking about an oral preparation like this, it's a minimum of 4 hours. There's been some data out there that says as little as 2, but if you're administering it by mouth, it's going to be about 4 hours. So in the medical profession, you're not allowed, if you go and you have a colonoscopy and you receive a sedative or a hypnotic sedative, you're kept in that facility until you're discharged to someone who can drive for you. And you can't have that procedure done unless you've got somebody waiting for you in the waiting room for this very reason. They have medical liability issues that are associated with that. We don't have any medical liability issues that are associated with these facilitators at all right now. There's no requirement for them to have malpractice insurance. There's no requirement for them to have any type of other insurance on the facility right now that I'm aware of. So as far as a public safety issue, if in my perfect world, I'd say that they should have a designated driver to take them home after their session, and that their session remain at a minimum of 4 hours. Now, this is only going to happen in a healing center. It's not going to happen at home, because in theory, a facilitator can come into your home, give you a dose, and walk away, as far as I know now. This may change as time goes on. So that's my reasoning behind my argument.
Yeah, I think we just need to explore this idea more.
Yep. Okay. Moving on. All right, this last one, I think we're about done, council, because this last part really has to do with how do we codify this? Do we put it in the land use code, or do we put it in the city code? I'm suggested to our staff that, look, let's just keep it in the city code, just like we did marijuana, and just have a short blurb in the land use code that refers back over to that, because we don't want a conflict. And let us deal with that part. We just want to make it uniform. Whatever we're doing with marijuana, we'll do the same with natural medicine, so we can regulate it appropriately and not have duplication or conflictions.
Okay.
So, and that's pretty much it. Questions or other discussion?
Any more thoughts from the audience?
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for having this. It's the first time I've been involved in this, and it's been real good. I did have one thing about the in-home use. That is going to be a real issue, but with the at a facility, you know, even at the dentist office, you know, you get a root canal, they want you to have somebody give you a ride home. I think Dr. Randall's recommendation on that, to go dig a bit further on that, is a legitimate concern. And again, thank you all for having this workshop. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming and providing input. Okay. I guess with that, can we adjourn? Great. Thank you all. Oh, hold on.
Do we have an idea when that we're gonna be visited by our doctor? That has more input?
July 15th.
July 15th.
Yeah,
Okay.
July 15th is correct. Dr. Jarrell will be here, and she'll be presenting directly to council.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so then the next public meeting is July 15th to go over all this again. So if you know anyone who wants to provide input or learn more, encourage them to come. I will most likely be out of town for that one.
Do we have any word from the county health department? Are they going to be involved in any way, shape, or form, or?
No,
Okay.
Can we invite them?
we're trying to convince to get some help, so.
Okay. Thank you. All right, let's adjourn this meeting. Thank you all.